From NBC News, multiple women online say they were punched while walking around New York City. Multiple videos, which were uploaded to TikTok, have picked up traction in the last week, with women online sharing their safety concerns in comments and reply videos. My response to this was, ha, 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 ha. And I got ratioed.
Yeah, good job.
And there was, you know, let me just, I'll just pull up the tweet because saying it doesn't do it justice. So let me pull up my tweet so you can get a general understanding of my position on this, and then I will explain it.
Were there any articles written about you, like far right podcaster celebrates?
It's this. Here's the image.
Misogynist.
At Tara Bull says, "Do you think this is funny?" And it's one of the videos, and I responded with this.
No.
Yes. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. It's actually quite simple. Let's see. Which tweets do I have? So we have the videos pulled up of various instances where women have been getting punched. And, Ian Miles Chong posting this collection of women saying they're getting punched. And let's see, we have another video. What else do we have pulled up? We have, I'll jump to the Women's Caucus in a second, but let me tell you why I think it's funny. Daniel Penny was on a train, and there were women on that train, and a man was threatening to kill them. Daniel Penny intervened. He's now facing jail for doing so.
Yeah.
They vote to ban guns. They vote to release criminals. They vote to arrest people like Daniel Penny. And what happens? Well, you release the criminals. You can't defend yourself. So the criminals know you can't defend yourself. So they go around punching you. I think it's hilarious. Why? You're eating crow. You reap what you sow. Voting has consequences. And I got to stop all the conservatives, because a bunch of conservatives are like, not cool, Tim. It's really bad that you shouldn't laugh at these women. And I'm like, no. How dare you, you authoritarians? These women were teary-eyed saying, I just want to get punched in the face. And they banged that voting card. They slammed their finger on that touch screen and said, I vote to get criminals on the street so they can punch me in the face. And I said, so brave of you to vote for what you want. And now they're living their dreams. You can't come to me and say that it's not funny these women are getting attacked when I'm like, they overwhelmingly voted for this to happen. And now it's happening. If someone voted, if we were, okay, how about this? We're all sitting here. We're like, let's vote on what we should get for dinner. And then Hannah Claire says, I want sushi. And we go, okay, everybody votes. It's mixed. But then sushi ends up winning. Sushi arrives. Hannah Claire starts crying because she doesn't want sushi. What am I going to do? I'm going to laugh.
Does she want a ham sandwich instead?
I'm like, you voted for it.
I'm sorry.
Now you're mad you got it? It's like a little kid being like, I want pizza. And the pizza comes and the kid starts crying. Like, I don't want pizza anymore. Well, it's what you get.
Mm-hmm. I'm conflicted. I really am, because at one end, I have an 18-year-old daughter and a wife. So if someone is attacking a woman, my initial reaction is to wait. I've been given things I'm not allowed to say. Is to be combative.
Well, I'll put it this way: you are legally allowed to defend yourself and others in this country, up into including lethal force, if you feel there's a threat to your life or there's serious bodily harm.
But we've just seen with the New York subway with Daniel Penny that doesn't apply. They will still come after you. It will still cost you money. Okay, so on the other hand, if I see a woman being punched, I'm thinking to myself, if I get involved in this, how much is it going to cost me to defend myself in court? I had a friend of mine who actually defended himself. He was an MMA guy, knocked a guy out. $50,000 later, they found him not guilty. He doesn't get that money back. So the question is, when do we stop looking out for society and start looking out for ourselves? It's conflicting.
Have you seen the film The Incredibles?
Yes.
Yeah, you guys have seen this one? Mm-hmm. Okay, so Mr. Incredible, superhero, sees a man about to commit suicide. And when the guy jumps off the building and is falling to his death, Mr. Incredible leaps into the air, catches him in midair, slamming through a window, rolling on the ground, and saving his life. And that man sued him, saying, I didn't want to be saved. I didn't ask to be saved. And now I'm injured because of you. And that was basically the premise of the film where this ended superheroes.
Yeah.
So if there's a woman in New York and a guy is threatening her and you're there, it's not just that you shouldn't just think to yourself, what will it cost? So there's a bunch of guys on Twitter being like, no, I'd intervene and defend her. And then what happens when she screams at you, hits you with the person, say, how dare you? I voted for this and I want this. How dare you? You're the criminal. The challenge is not just that you will get arrested for saving a woman. It's that you're assuming that woman is actually upset about what's going on.
I think that's the challenge here, which is that, you know, whether or not they thought through the consequences that they had, if you are supporting, you know, policies that allow criminals to be released or, you know, things that don't sufficiently deal with people who are violent offenders, you are ultimately voting against your own safety. And it's hard for me to watch these videos because obviously, like, I'm a woman walking down the street. It's stressful to think like you have to be more aware, especially if you're by yourself, of like what's going on and things you have to do. You know, it's a reason that I would choose not to live in New York because there are certain laws that restrict ways that you can defend yourself. But at the same time, when I look at these videos and see like how upset they are and that they're getting hurt, like I am sad for them and I wish we lived in a place where that didn't happen. On the other hand, like they are actively participating in the creation of this circumstance. And so you have to say like, all of these women who got punched, are you now willing to move out of New York? Are you willing to change how you vote? Like, this is sad that it happened to you, but what have you learned from this experience? And it's not enough to just be like, can you believe this happened to me? Like, you have to actively be part of the solution now because you have been part of the problem.
I had people tweet at me like, wouldn't you be upset if your mom or girlfriend got attacked? And I said, I live in West Virginia. We have constitutional carry. I am not that concerned.
And the laws are on your side. And there's a stand your ground and all that good stuff.
I mean, it's why I got out of New York. It's why I got out of New Jersey. And it's why our new studio is launching in like a week. It's already done. We've been using it, and we've been building out the tech and stuff, and it looks amazing. And it's in the heart of West Virginia. Well, it's not the heart of West, but it's in the Eastern Panhandle. It's dead in West Virginia, and we've got water on the property. We've got emergency backup power and guns. We have so many, I can't count them. I can't remember who said this. Someone on Twitter. Was it Austin Peterson maybe? If you can count the number of guns you have, you don't have enough. And so my attitude is, obviously I would be upset if a loved one of mine was attacked by a deranged man. I also recognize the importance of them having the ability to defend themselves, to be in shape to the best of their abilities, to know how to defend themselves, and to be armed. But you in New York City voted to disarm yourselves. I'm going to laugh. You're living the way you want to live. What am I supposed to do about that? Why are people upset? They're living the way they chose to live. Destiny had a really great point. He said, honestly, I felt the exact same way about conservatives dying of COVID.
Wow.
And I'm like, well, I'm not talking about women dying here, but I'll be fair. His sentiment, his view is, you are choosing to live a way I think will lead to your harm, and then you are reaping the repercussions of your own bad choices. Yeah, what do you want me to do about it? Are we gonna go invade New York and change the laws? No. So then what? And we're gonna sit back, mind our own business where we try to secure our families and our communities, and then we laugh at the people who vote to destroy themselves.
There's really no good answer about this. There's no good way to look at this because as men, we should be protecting. You know, I've actually gone almost 180 on this subject when you're looking at, for example, biological men in women's sports. When you look at the repercussions for women standing up against it, these are girls who train 5 hours a day, probably amenorrheic. They can't have periods anymore. They train so hard. They've given their entire life from 6 years old to let's play soccer. Say soccer. And then they're in high school and they say, if you don't play in this game, if you forfeit this game, you're done. You're not going to get a college scholarship. Your dreams are over. So I'm in a situation now, and this is in the last week, where I almost think that as men, we need to stand up and say, this is not working. What is happening is not working because women can make great CEOs, great everything. They're great. They're awesome. I'm not going to be on that sexist, misogynistic rant. I'm not doing that. But when it comes to protecting society, when it comes to protecting women and children, it's up to the men. So what do we do?
I think Daniel Penny was trying to defend a woman.
So was it worth it? Would he do it again? Yeah. That's the question.
So it is a good question. Not. And what do you do? Well, it is up to men to protect women. It is both a biological reality. It's a moral reality for many of us who hold those morals. But however, what if there's a bunch of women standing in a field and there is a boulder rolling down a mountain and it's about to crush all of them. And you run over and go, we got to get these women out of here. And they scream at you, throw rocks at you and tell you to screw off. At a certain point, it's like, I don't know I can save them. New York City, you've got women vote in the United States, 70% of millennial women vote Democrat. They are voting in people who are burning this country to the ground. I do not blame all women for this. I'm saying it's a generality. In New York, where it's a Democrat stronghold, it's actually a significantly higher percentage. So if they are telling you outright, your worldview is not welcome here, your guns, your defense, your masculinity is toxic, get away from me, do you force yourself and your worldview on that woman for her own safety?
Are we assuming that all of these victims share that? Because there are people who don't vote like that. Do we have to go with that assumption?
I understand that. But the issue then is, do you go into a foreign country, for instance, like Canada? Should we go into Canada and give them free speech? Certainly many people in Canada, probably the most, actually do like free speech, but the government won't give it to them. Yeah. Many of them had their guns taken away by decree. Should the United States invade Canada to restore the rights because not everyone agrees with having their guns taken away? The answer is no. Should we go into New York and impose our will on these people because they choose to vote the way they do? I think the answer is no. I do think, however, if Trump gets elected, he should suspend federal funding to them because they're a corrupt communist state. But that's different from telling them they should have to carry guns and lock up their criminals. Hey, you want to live this way and let your criminals roam free? You choose to live there. Ain't nobody making you stay.
My fear is it's a social contagion, that if it can happen there, it can happen anywhere. And you see that in blue areas of red states, like Nashville, for example, like Memphis. So my fear is that if men don't societally take a role in protecting women and children, that it's a slippery slope.
I feel like the issue is, in the past 130, 140 years, actually just about 180 years, women have stated in force and often with physical force to men, we don't want your protection. So back the F off. The question then becomes, if a woman is about to walk into there's a shootout happening in New York and a woman's walking into it, should the guy grab her by force and rip her away while she protests, get your hands off me? Or should they be like, you are free to do what you want? The question here is interesting because I've been in circumstances like this where we had, I went to Egypt, for instance, and right before I had gone there, a young female Dutch reporter was gang raped in Tahrir Square because her company said, we need a reporter to go to Egypt. And said, I want to do it. And they said, okay, strong woman, go ahead. My attitude was, if a woman came to me and said, I want to go to Tahrir Square, I'd say, not on my dime, you're not. You go do whatever you want on your own dime, but I'm not paying for you to go get gang raped, because that's what was happening in Tahrir Square. The question is, let's say there's a female journalist about to walk into Tahrir Square and you, Mark, are standing right behind her and she's got a camera and she's ready to go. Would you physically restrain her and stop her from going in?
No.
Or would you say, by all means, you can go do what you want. You're fierce and independent.
Yeah.
And then she walks in and gets gang raped.
Free will.
But men are supposed to protect women from these bad decisions.
You're right.
So what's happening in New York is their own fault. And there's going to be people who didn't vote for it, but they certainly choose to live there and live under these policies that are voted in incessantly and overwhelmingly by the people of New York, not just women. So I laugh. I say, okay, well, you know what's going on there. You choose to live this way. It's been years of excessive and rampant skyrocketing crime and terror on the subways. And I'm supposed to feel sympathy for the people. Look, if I watched a guy skydive, he's like, I'm gonna base jump. He's a base jumper. And then his chute fails. Yes, I'm going to be like, oh no. But I also understand he made those choices. I'm not going to be like, we should ban bungee jumping. We should ban base jumping. I'm going to be like, well, look, these people know the risk they take when they go. Imagine we banned skiing because people who go on mountains sometimes crash or fall into tree wells or something like that. No more skateboarding because you might get hurt and we don't want you to get hurt and we got to decide for you to tell you what's, nah. If they want to vote these policies in, they're more than happy to, and I will laugh when they get screwed up by it. A lady getting punched in the face is not her dying. The reason why I'm laughing is because they're going to get over it. One lady was even laughing with a lump on her head, being like, well, they got me.
Well, they didn't die in this situation. She falls backwards, hits her head. It's murder. So
and the knockout game has been serious?
Yes.
And they keep voting for it.
They do as a majority, but that's the democratic system. That's why democracy doesn't always work.
And we cannot invade New York to protect the minority who doesn't want to live that way when they choose to live there under the people who keep voting for these policies.
So we're saying that's a no travel zone now? So now I'm just playing devil's advocate here, but let's say that my daughter has a business meeting in New York. Does she?
Same as bungee jumping.
Okay.
If you're going to go skydiving, there's a possibility your chute fails and your reserve fails, and then you got to figure out how you're going to survive this one. We don't ban skydiving. So I would say if your daughter is going to go to New York, you should sit down with her and say, take a look at these hotspots, take a look at the crime maps, take a look at what they're saying about the crime, be ready, be prepared, understand the laws will stop you from protecting yourself. You're taking these risks. I think you'll likely be fine. Just know your risks.
And I think it's worth mentioning that Tim's hypothetical in Tahrir Square wasn't a hypothetical. It was speaking of talented journalist Lara Logan, I believe.
No, not Lara Logan.
Oh, wasn't? Okay, never mind then.
Nope, there was a Dutch journalist.
Oh, okay.
But was Lara Logan gang raped?
Lara Logan was also assaulted in Egypt. It might just be a trend there.
Oh no, yeah, it was a commonplace thing.
It's very common, yeah. There,
it's 2,000 men screaming. Wow. The woman walks in and they grab her, rip her clothes off, and they're shoving their hands in her.
I mean, there is a reason that you can Google best countries for solo female travelers, right? But I don't see those for men. I only see them for women. It's because women have to assess risk very differently than men. And I think you're right. There are women who will say like, no, I could do whatever I want and live my dreams. And like, I'm sorry, that's just not realistic. And I think, you know, whatever the solution is, it's up to women to be conscious of the dangers and risks that they're taking on.
Men are more likely to be the victims of violent crime. But men, for obvious reasons, are more likely to be able to handle being a victim of violent crime. The issue of international conflict when it comes to men, and this was such a funny thing I had to deal with when I did hostile environment training, because they make you do it for insurance purposes. What happens to a guy, typically, when you engage in, when you find yourself involved, peripherally, as a journalist or otherwise, in an international conflict? Typically, you die. You might be kidnapped, you might die. If you're a woman, you are now a sex slave. This is the reality. And so the funny thing is, because of political correctness in this country, when they do the hostile environment training, they have to equally warn men and women of both being killed and being sex slaves. I assure you, while there are certain circumstances where men get raped, yes, overwhelmingly, they will just use you as a bargaining chip or kill you. And if you're a woman, you become property instantly. Wow. You are owned. Or they kill you. That's true. Like they might behead you or something, depending on where you are, what country you're in. But there are very, very different realities. If you're a man, you are more likely to get attacked. The reason why I think, as Hannah Claire mentions, they have websites for telling women where they can travel to is because not necessarily that they're more likely to be attacked, but that they're less capable of defending themselves.
Yes.
And they're more likely to be tortured and enslaved. So there's certainly take your precautions. But that being said, I think the other issue is that men are dumb. And I don't mean like on average men are stupid. It's the greater male variability hypothesis shows that there's stupider men and smarter men, however you want to put it. What I mean is guys take risks that women don't take. So a guy might be like, I'll go to Pakistan, I'll be fine. And then they find themselves running from gunfire or something, or crazy stuff happens out there. I got to tell you.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that the way that men and women naturally react to danger or threat is very different. Like I'm sure for men, it's like, if someone were to come up and try and like take your wallet, right? Your reaction is like, I'm going to defend myself physically. But for women, maybe you want to defend yourself. You're probably thinking maybe that's why I carry pepper spray or something like that. Also, how do I get out of this situation as fast as possible? Because the likelihood is you can't handle your attacker. Like the risk analysis is just so different for men and women. It's important that we acknowledge that always. Like when these women are walking down the street in New York, even in broad daylight, their experience is very different from men, and it should be if they're being realistic and conscious, right? Like if they are actually being careful about their safety, they just analyze the situation differently than men because they have different advantages and different disadvantages.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.